today. We'll see how the background noise is. I apologize in advance if there's too many neighborhood noises. We'll see how it goes. At any rate, the topic for this week is change. So it's mid-November, which, among other things, means that it's probably too early for a lot of you to be thinking about New Year's resolutions just yet. So I'd like to invite you at this point to think back to this past January, or to other Januaries in the past, and remember some of the failed New Year's resolutions that lay strewn out behind you, the detritus of good intentions. This year I'm going to read 50 books, or this year I'm going to keep better touch with my friends, or this year I'm going to eat macrobiotics, whatever. New Year's resolutions are a great example of change. They speak to the ideals of who it is that we want to be. There are certain things, so many things, that we could do, that are within our power to do, that would make our lives better in some way. We know that we ought to do these things, and we want to do these things. So why don't we? What stops us as individual people from making changes within our individual lives that are within our power? Well, Rogers in 2003 stated that to adopt a new idea, a 5-step process must occur. And I want to stipulate that by adopting a new idea, I mean not just recognizing that it is a good idea, but actually taking it into our lives or into our communities and creating a systematic change that is sustainable over time. That's what I mean by adopting an idea, right? It's making it a part of us. So, 5-step process. We have knowledge, persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. Knowledge means we know what it is that we want to do. Like we have heard of this thing, we decide it's a great idea. Persuasion is we are persuaded that this is a change that we can do within our lives. It's something that we can enact and would be a good thing for us. Then we decide to do it. Take the plunge, right? But decision on its own is not enough. You actually have to do it afterwards, right? So there's the implementation step. And with the implementation, then you come up with confirmation. So you see what effect it has in your life, or what impact it has on the community. You see how this change affects our lives, and then it's either confirmed that yes, this was a good thing and I should continue doing it, or no, it wasn't a good thing and I'm not going to do it anymore, or it was too hard, or whatever else. And then, rinse and repeat as necessary. But in order to make a sustainable change, we have to know what to do, be persuaded that it's a good idea, decide to do it, and then see if it was a good idea that leads to good outcomes, and so keep doing it. It takes support of experience. So here, let's take a step away from failed New Year's resolutions, and instead think about the things that you used to do, or character attributes that you used to have, that you did change. So not stuff that you gave up because it was too hard or didn't work in your life or whatever, but things that you actually are now that you didn't used to be. Throughout our lives, we grow and develop. We leave things behind that don't work for us, and we adopt new traits and become better. We have successful change in our lives, all of us. So think about who you used to be, and I'm talking about that embarrassing 13-year-old version of yourself. Think of how far you have come since then. This is the possibility of change, yeah? But change is a tricky thing, and I think that caught up within those 5 steps is the need for support of change. Support that I should do this, that this is the right thing. Support in the doing part, in the implementation. Support that facilitates the change. And support in the confirmation, that it's not just me that sees the benefit, but that this change fits in my life, in my family, in my community. Support that means I don't have to leave everything I used to be behind in order to adopt this new thing, but that this new thing fits into who I am, and who I am with this new thing still fits into my life. Well, this is a very complex process, even just as individual change. So now start thinking about groups and communities and changing societies, changing how the entire world operates. That's the level of change that's necessary for climate change, yeah? So now think about these 5 levels: knowledge, persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. But with societal level changes necessary to address climate change. As we talked about last week, knowledge about whether or not there is climate change is still debated, even though it's not a debatable issue. What is debatable, however, is knowledge about the right course of action. What is it? I don't know. There are so many, many, many things that we could possibly do to address climate change. And there are things that we pretty much all agree are good ideas, but that are expensive or complicated or would fundamentally alter the way our society operates, meaning it's too hard for one reason or another. There are also things that some people think are great ideas, but others think are terrible ideas. There are some things that can be implemented, that are being implemented as a matter of fact, but just aren't enough by themselves to adequately address climate change. There are lots of different ideas within this knowledge of what to do about climate change. We have 7 billion people on this planet. That's 7 billion potentially different opinions about this stage, this knowledge stage. What do we do? So, let's ignore this problem and move on to the next step, yeah? Persuasion. So we'll randomly pick out some of the knowledge that is a good idea and that can be implemented. So, okay, now we have this knowledge. Now we have to persuade 7 billion people to try it. Or we can take the easier road and persuade 196 countries to try it. And yes, when I call this the easier road, I am being facetious. Think of our one country, trying to persuade enough people in power of the rightness of our knowledge. Countrywide, worldwide, we have so many different cultures and communities and interests and values and worldviews and priorities and resources and capacities and desires and needs. How do you persuade all of them to our way of thinking? Or enough of them to our way of thinking to actually implement a change? We see the debates on the news all the time. We know that this is not an easy thing to do. We feel very strongly about our different ways of seeing the world, yeah? So, skip this step. It's too difficult. So enough of them have to decide to implement the knowledge. They've been persuaded. We get them to decide. But even more important is that decision has to be followed through with action. It actually has to be implemented after we have persuaded everybody. And it has to be implemented sufficiently across the world by people with different regional capacities, with different political upheavals, different power within their community to implement, and different levels of desire to implement. And then after it's implemented, we gotta confirm that it was the right thing to do in order for people to keep doing it. Climate is the average of weather patterns over years. If we implement something worldwide, all of us right now today, we're not going to know next month if it was the right decision. We may not even know next decade. Let me rephrase this. There may be scientific evidence that it was the right change within a shortish period of time, say within a decade, but we may not have change. We may not see outcomes that people can see and experience for themselves. People with their different lives and values and motivations and interests and desires and needs. And so if our long-term change doesn't fit within our short-term needs, we may not be seeing the benefit of the gains that make this change worthwhile. Change is a hard thing, and I would like to stipulate at this time that I am not advocating that we give up as we recognize how hard change is. Rather, I would like to advocate that we recognize the difficulty of change and make sure that we adjust our plans accordingly with the expectation of this difficulty. And I would further like to remind you that while climate change was not intentional, it also wasn't easy. We're talking about 250 years of concerted effort, worldwide effort, to develop industries, burn fossil fuels, clear-cut forests and destroy other carbon sinks, to dump plastics into the ocean. We as a species have put a lot of effort into creating climate change. We just didn't know we were doing it at the time. So change is possible. It's just hard, yeah? So class, next week, November 26th, is the third section of your paper is going to be due. After that, your job will be to put the 3 sections together into one paper. Make edits according to my comments that you've received throughout the semester, and also according to what you've learned throughout the semester. Some of your thoughts may have changed from earlier weeks based on what you have learned since then, or based on class discussions. So the final paper is also going to require the citations to all be in there and everything. And remember to put everything in APA format. So if you're from another discipline and you would like to use a different format than APA, that's fine, just let me know. But you have 2 weeks, November 26th, for the next section due. And I look forward to the discussions this week. I think that they're going to be very interesting. So I will see you all online. Have a great one.